What is up, guys? Well, Stranger Things Season 5 just kicked off its first batch of episodes a couple of days ago because it was the holidays, and for other reasons, I didn't quite get to it as fast as some others. But now, me and my family have got through all 4 of these first batch of episodes, and it's time to talk about my first impressions of this final season of Stranger Things. For just some quick backstory, me and my wife actually started watching Stranger Things back when it first released, before it became this big monumental pop culture thing, and so I've been there since day one, have always really enjoyed this show. Save for season 2, which I think is easily their weakest season so far. But season 3 I had a blast with. Season 4 I thought was pretty epic. But it's been a long time since I've talked about this show on this channel. I dropped reviews of season 1 and season 2 years ago. Season 3 dropped at a time where I was just so busy, back when I actually had a full-time job as well as doing YouTube, that I just didn't have a chance to watch it. And then season 4 I had every intention of reviewing, especially with all of the Freddy Krueger vibes that the trailers were giving off. But the PR people at Netflix and the people that were handling Stranger Things at the time were being incredibly shady, so I just decided to take the 0 on that one. But while certainly being a little impatient and frustrated at how long it has taken to get these last batch of episodes, I've been very excited to hopefully land the plane in a good way, where Stranger Things Season 5 ended up being a great season, would easily land this show into being maybe in my top 5 or 6 favorite shows of all time. And I do think it's important to note that this is just my impressions on this first batch of episodes. We're going to get 3 more on Christmas Day, and then the very final episode, which is like 2 hours long, on New Year's Day. So inevitably, some of my thoughts, my concerns, as well as maybe even some of my positives on this first batch is going to evolve and change as this final season develops. And with that said, my initial impression of these first 4 episodes is that I'm very happy to be back in Hawkins. I think there's been some epic moments so far. It definitely has some grand scale final battle, huge stakes weight to this final season, which it should have. But there's also a lot of rough edges to these first 4 episodes that I'm hoping get sanded off quite a bit as we continue on through this last season. So starting off with the positives, as I've already said, it's great to be back with these characters in this world. I think Stranger Things has been one of the most exciting things to happen to television in my lifetime. It was something that was just a cool little hidden thing for maybe about a couple of days back when Netflix was dropping consistently exciting things. And it has since grown into this huge pop culture icon, to where Stranger Things Season 5 is this pop culture event that has taken over the entire country, maybe even the entire world for all I know, where it crashed Netflix a couple of times. It's all people could talk about. Like, some people were talking about this more than the actual holidays that they're going to be dropping these episodes on. And it's exciting to have something like that, because over the last 5 to 10 years, we've slowly lost a bit of that in our culture, with the boom of streaming services and some of the decline of movie theaters, where there's certainly some things that will bring us all together, be that water cooler conversation, be that that piece of media that we're all obsessed with and we're all talking about and speculating with each other for a period of time. But they're very few and far between nowadays. So when you get something like this, that it feels like everybody is excited to check it out, and everybody is going to be talking about it, where you feel like you have to race to be sure to watch it so that you don't get left behind, that is exciting. From the very beginning, you also get this sense of this is a huge scale final season. Now, this is a show that has continuously started to grow in size and scale ever since the success of season 1. Season 3 especially was the first time where it felt like we have really upped the ante on what is going on here. Season 4 even more so, where there was these epic run times, this like broken release schedule, and very much a much more grand scale, like feature length style of storytelling that certainly was not the approach early on in the show. And this only continues that, where there's a number of episodes that's going to be released this season that are the length of movies, if not longer than most movies. And there's something really badass about having a show that is so successful that we love on that level, where they're able to get this massive budget and tell this epic scale storyline that I think this show has definitely grown itself into earning, into meriting by this 5th season. And so you don't walk into this at all feeling like we're starting with a whimper, or they've already ran through their best storylines and their best struggles, and we're just kind of going through the motions until the tape runs out. This really does start with a bang, and showing that there's personal stakes, there's huge potential world-ending stakes. The military's finally involved with very much quarantining both the regular version of Hawkins as well as the upside down version of Hawkins. They're trying to discover what Vecna's ultimate plan is, as he has already set things in motion to enact that plan. You have very much a feeling among a lot of the characters' interpersonal storylines that we're finally going to be heading towards the end or the culmination or climax of some of those, whether it's Will's feelings towards Mike, or it's the love triangle going on between Jonathan and Nancy and Steve Harrington, the friendship between Dustin and Steve Harrington, the relationship between Elle and Hopper. Like, there's so many things that have been slowly built up, some maybe drawing out a little bit too long over the last number of seasons, that you feel like being around these characters this time, we're finally going to be heading towards the ending of those chapters. I also really enjoy the grouping of characters that we have gotten so far in this season. Now, this is something that's always a little bit hit and miss whenever you have a show like this that is an ensemble cast. Inevitably, they always try to change up the character dynamics and move people around the chessboard and see if different characters pairing have some new dynamics, some new chemistry that we didn't explore in previous seasons. And this season so far has been a mix of getting some new elements, some new relationships, while also just regrouping people that have a strong bond before, but giving them a little bit of a different shade. Like, you have Dustin and Steve that have always kind of been this cool little bromance that we've loved ever since the end of season 2. And this one, you have them back together, but they're very much at odds with each other because Dustin's a much more grim character. He's a lot more soured by the events of season 4, and Steve's kind of more ribbing personality isn't landing as well. And so you still get that bromance. You feel like we're probably going to land back into them being much more cordial with each other in the back half of this season. But so far, it's an interesting dynamic to see them not get along as well as they have in the past couple of seasons. You got Elle and Hopper that are together finally, for two characters that have been interlocked since season 2, especially, to finally have them out doing a mission where Hopper has to be the badass that he is, but also has to be the dad. And 11 is like basically the superhero of the show, as she's always been, but even more so now. And so it's time for her to shine, while also having that very much father-daughter antagonism where she wants more freedom, she wants more trust, and he wants to protect her at all odds. I've enjoyed seeing that so far. And even having Robin and Will together. Two characters that I certainly have my issues with the writing with that we'll talk about a little bit later, but there's moments between them that I think have been really well done. Not just in advancing Will's character, but I think that they have a nice little dynamic where Robin is very diarrhea of the mouth, very like quirky and mile a minute with her thoughts. And Will is such this quiet, stoic, like borderline whiny character, let's be honest, that she kind of brings the best out of him. She makes him a little bit more enjoyable of a character during those moments where it feels like he's not really doing much for the story aside from getting goosebumps and having visions. But a couple of moments, in particular, where they're very clearly trying to set up him finally expressing his feelings towards Mike. I think it'd be ridiculous if we end the show and that never happens, because it's just been dangling like forever at this point to an exhausting degree. And her giving him just the right amount of pep talk, and her giving him the right amount of stories about herself as somebody who's also gay or bisexual, whatever. And so giving those moments where he's starting to realize that he can be himself, that will inevitably lead to that, but even in a more badass fashion leads to where we end up in the end of episode 4, where he literally unlocks something about himself that was the most badass moment of these 4 episodes for sure. And while it certainly felt like we were off to a bit of a slower start in the first couple of episodes, they pay it off big as far as the action and the excitement and the thrills in episode 3 and especially episode 4. In episode 3, we get that really awesome Home Alone sequence where they're putting all these traps together to try to trap or at least damage the shit out of a Demogorgon to where they can stick a tracker on him and follow him. That whole sequence was badass and very exciting, very thrilling, and I liked seeing a somewhat realistic but also a fun over-the-top way on how they're able to booby-trap this house in a very Home Alone-esque style. And even where they follow through with it, with having the group of characters in the car that, bust through and follow him into the Upside Down, was a really funny sequence to see the reactions change before they hit and then after they're in the Upside Down. And of course, the action sequence that ends this batch of episodes in episode 4 was awesome, where you have multiple Demogorgons as well as Vecna himself come in and just lay waste to all of the military personnel that are guarding all of these kids, literally getting every single kid that they were spent the last couple of episodes trying to protect and trying to get out of Vecna's warpath. And, like a lot of good seasons of Stranger Things, it ends us in a point where the characters have had the significant loss where their plans have been foiled. Everything that they tried to do in the last couple of episodes did not work. Vecna now has every single one of the kids that he needs to enact his plan, but it feels like they also get a little bit of a victory there in what happens with Will, and now the potential of what's going to happen in the back half of this season, and now this arsenal that they have at their disposal that totally unlocks this new potential to take down Vecna. That's very exciting. So it leaves you in like these complicated feelings. It's always fun where it's like, oh shit, we lost. Ooh, but that's a good moment. It's like playing a video game and you are getting your ass kicked by a boss, and then right before he kills you, you figure out a way to exploit one of his weaknesses. So you die and you're like, fuck, but I'm about to fuck him up on the next round. And the last thing that I'll say in positives, this is going to be my only like spoiler-filled segment here. I don't know why you'd be watching this review if you haven't watched these episodes, but I'm sure there's going to be somebody who's going to do it and bitch. So this is where I'll talk about the specific plot reveals, the twists, the things that are going to be our major implications moving forward. And I thought all of them were great. I thought that the ultimate reveal of what Vecna's plan is, going all the way back to why he took Will in season 1, was a really good thing. Like, it's kind of retconned. It doesn't feel like that was their plan from the beginning, but it doesn't feel like a square peg shoved into a round hole type of situation. Like, I'm cool to accept the little bit of retcon there for this to be his ultimate plan, to use these kids as vessels, to use them as his pawns to recreate the world in the way that he wants. I think it makes sense. And I think it gives even more weight to the events that literally kicked this show off in season 1. So I enjoyed that, and I'm curious to see how that's going to be visualized going forward. It feels very Alien-esque in this, or Aliens-esque in this one, where you're going to have kids like stuck up on the walls and hoses and everything like in the Queen's lair in Alien. So that's pretty cool. I also thought that the reveal that you had Elle and Hopper that were trying to break into this little lab, the Hawkins lab in the Upside Down, that was led by Linda Hamilton. That's another positive. I love having Sarah Connor in here. We didn't get a lot out of her, but just seeing her always made me smile. But I like the reveal that they thought they were going to unlock this door and Vecna was going to be there, and it turned out Hopper was on a bit of a suicide mission. We all knew it wasn't going to be Vecna. It's too early for that. And of course, we weren't going to lose Hopper at this point. But the reveal that it was actually, I believe, 8, the pseudo sister of 11 that we met very briefly in season 2 in an episode that most people think is the worst episode of the show. I think it was a cool reveal to have her for 2 reasons. One, it gives some interesting implications of like, what is this going to mean? Is she going to get along with 11? Have they altered her somewhat? Is there going to be turmoil or embrace there? Are we going to have 2 11s as well as other characters that I'm going to talk about here in a moment that are going to be all against Vecna, and what epic scale fight is that going to be? Also, I kind of like the idea of them redeeming themselves from that storyline in season 2. Now, I don't hate it as passionately as a lot of people, but it's a very popular answer to say that that whole side quest that 11 went on was the biggest misstep the show ever had. And so the fact that they're going to try to roll the dice a second time and maybe redeem that and make that episode feel like it actually has more of a purpose now, I like the possibility of that. Don't know if it's going to work yet or not, but I like the possibility of it. And then the final reveal that Will essentially unlocks 11-esque powers at the end, like finally figures out what power he has by being tied into Vecna's little hive mind. That was a badass moment. That was a badass moment visually, as well as just finally giving this character something cool to do. This fucking kid's been moping around and whining and crying and being the 5th wheel to this group for like the last number of seasons. It's been frustrating how poorly they have written his character, because I feel like it makes people dislike his character. It even makes some people dislike the actor, which is ridiculous. I know he's got controversies elsewhere, but it's a character that has always felt like, can we find something else to do besides make him closeted gay for Mike? And if you're going to only do that, pay it off at some point, because god damn, TikTok. And so I love the fact that they're actually giving some emotional weight to that side of his storyline, because it feels like it's finally going to be paid off, as well as the fact that he finally gets his badass moment, where now he's going to be able to be an active player in this storyline and not just be this lingering thing that the writers don't know what to do with. Now, with all that said, let's talk about some of my mixed, and this is really just things that, for the most part, I don't know where I land on because I haven't seen the whole batch of episodes yet. And the big one is I do have concerns that maybe the scales are a little too large for this season to be able to pay off. There's too many storylines, both big as well as like small character storylines that need to be paid off. And I don't know if they're going to have the time to do it all satisfyingly. I mean, they're just every single thing going on in between all of our main characters is enough, but they have grown this cast every single season to where I really did feel like these first 4 episodes struggled to focus on all the individual characters. And it really feels like, even though we're getting these feature-length style episodes, I think season 5 is going to end up being shorter overall than season 4. I feel like it should have been longer because there's just so many things that feel like we're getting shortchanged on. And I think there's also too many plot lines that require so much explanation that it's making the writing priority of this season be more on the exposition and the explaining of the plans and the side B plans and the implications of things plot wise, more so than the characters, which is the main thing that we all love about Stranger Things. Like the upside down, the monsters, the intrigue, the plots, the twist reveals, all that stuff is great. And when it's good, it's amazing. It's some of the best stuff on TV. But we love Stranger Things for the characters. That's what made us fall in love with this show way back in the day in season 1 was these kids. It's why we have stuck with the show. It's why we're willing to forgive some of the weaker elements because we love the high points, and the high points are so good because all these characters are amazing. And it just feels like I want the season to spend just as much time, if not honestly more time, developing out and paying off those things than spending so much time and energy and screen time on the espionage side of things. Like, just for an example, we get the reveal, which again is going to be a spoiler, so earmuffs if you don't want to hear about it. We get the reveal in, I think it was the end of season or episode 3, where Max, of course, is still alive. We knew she wasn't going to be dead, but she's essentially like imprisoned in Vecna's memories with Holly, who has now been recently taken by Vecna. And so she's going to be like the shepherd to get Holly out of this realm. And you get this whole exposition dump in episode 4 where Max is explaining how she got there, what she's been doing, and she was essentially going through all these different memories of Vecna. That whole sequence felt like it should have been an episode because it was just like on fast forward. It's like, oh, I'm in the 30s, and now I'm back in Hawkins' lab, and now I'm at this house, and now I'm in the woods, and I'm in the caves, and now I'm in the red world, and I was about to get out, and then I didn't, and I had to run, and how I just ran, and then all of a sudden I'm at a cave is kind of unexplained. And there's an intriguing mystery there of what's in this cave that Vecna's so terrified of that is interesting, but that's just an example of like something that I think should have been more focus that had to get shortchanged because there's just so much other shit going on that they don't have the time to focus on it. And I think that's a shame. And I worry that by the end of this season, there's going to be so many of those things that we're going to look back on and be like, yeah, that was all great, but man, all this stuff felt like it was getting fast forwarded through, and I really wanted to let it breathe more. The other thing that I'll say here in the mix, which is heavily mixed positive, is the CGI. I think this is one of the main reasons, if not the main reason, why this show takes so fucking long to get new seasons over the last couple of seasons, is because it's such a grand scale CGI spectacle at this point with the way that they visualize the upside down, with the number of creatures and the transitioning in and out of worlds so frequently that we do in this back part of the show. And I think that for the most part, the CGI looks great. I think the CGI looks great on all of the creatures, on Demogorgons, on the ripping in and out of the worlds, on Vecna, and even some of the other things that I'm just forgetting to list specifically. There's some green screen work, though, that is not great. It's not terrible. It's not Jeepers Creepers Reborn level. But when I can tell it's a green screen, it is a little bit of an uncanny valley. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of people that can absolutely watch this show and never even realize it. But if you've worked with green screens, you can very quickly and easily tell when the characters are the only thing that feel like tangible and everything else is like this flat image behind them. And there was multiple points with the, Vecna's house, There was spots where you had Steve and Jonathan up at that little tower, which very clearly was not shot on a tower. There's, of course, the Upside Down itself. There's multiple points where they're on some kind of a stage with blue and green screen that are going to color out the Upside Down. And those are the moments where I just don't think it's as good. Again, it's not bad. It's not glaringly miserable to look at, but those are the moments where the uncanny valley is there for me. And if I'm going to wait 3 years, I'm just like, come on, man. This should be seamless with the amount of time you had. And now moving on to the negatives. And let me go ahead and just get this easy, quick one out of the way now. It's something that we all knew was going to be a bit of a hurdle for them. And for some, it's going to be a larger issue than others. For me, I can easily look past it for the sake of the storyline, but it is something that's pretty comedic. And that's the fact that these actors don't at all sell the fact that they are still high school kids.
Motherfucker, you look 30.
I mean, the scene that they were like all reintroduced where you have Dustin being pushed against the lockers by the basketball kids who actually somewhat look like high school kids. And then you get Lucas that walks up and it looks like they had to shave that fucking guy in between takes because he looks like he's like in his 30s. And that you even have the added problem of Holly being a character that has been promoted into being more of a main player this season because she's supposed to be portraying like an 8-year-old girl. She looks like she's about 14. And so every time they have her dressed up in these very like youthful pigtails and acting very kiddie with the dolls and stuff, I'm like, okay, that's just not working. I'm sorry. And so, yes, can I easily look past this and just, escape into the show to enjoy this final season? Yes, I can. But there's moments where you look at them and it's just like, no, no.
Shit, nigga, you at least 30.
And the other issue that I have with these first 4 episodes, I'm going to explain it in a bunch of different ways because it kind of takes different forms, but it all kind of comes down to the writing. I think that there is some significant issues with the writing so far. Not to the point where I dislike the show or I dislike this season, but I think that so far it's a similar problem that I had with the final season of Cobra Kai that was also released in like this Netflix, chunked release, that the early parts of the season had a lot of writing weaknesses trying to set up everything that luckily got paid off big in the back section. And I expect the same thing to happen here, hopefully. But, first of all, as I've already kind of hinted at, there's way too much exposition and explaining the plot. There's like 6 or 7 different scenes in these 4 episodes where the characters all get together with a fucking map and a drawing board and a pointer to explain the problem. And then somebody has this moment where a light bulb goes off. Usually it's Robin, who is like, oh my God, well, we can kind of do this and get this person here and we can sneak in this way. And then that'll get us to execute our plan. And then they all tell the other characters the plan while essentially explaining to the audience, this is what's going on. This is why we have to do it. And this is what you're about to see. And you can have 1 or 2 of those. But when it feels like a crutch of the writing to just kind of like get the plot out of the way because there's so much stuff going on that they have to get through, it becomes a little bit of an annoyance for me. I think like in episode 4, there was like 2 of these back to back. And so it just kind of feels like it's a bit of a trope of the writing in the season so far. I also feel like they're not doing a good enough job at actually writing the dialogue to be convincing. It doesn't feel like actual conversations that these characters would be having. It just feels like stuff that the writers have only gotten to a certain amount of efficiency and they're like, okay, good enough. They'll understand the plot here. Just move forward. And I wish they would have given it a couple of more passes because those scenes, I think, are among the weakest of the season so far. I also feel like the writing in some of the comedy side of things has not been so strong this season. There have been a couple of good moments, a couple of good smiles, and a couple of good laughs for me. There have also been some really cringeworthy moments. There was one in episode 4 where they're making a reference to The Great Escape, and they're calling one of the tunnels Dick, like in that movie. And of course, they turn it into like a running gag of euphemisms. And so there's a section where they're like, well, what if Dick's too hard? Well, if it's too hard, I'll just make it soft. And it's like, what? I was sitting next to my wife watching these 4 episodes, and she's somebody that more times than not is not critical at all. She just watches a movie, enjoys it or doesn't. Obviously, she doesn't do what I do for a living. But when that line came about the Dick tunnel being too hard or too soft, she literally looked at me and we're both like, that was bad. That was bad. Even a couple moments when they're trying to be cute and really hammer home the 80s nostalgia, where you have Winona Ryder who's talking about certain things, and then Robin gets an idea and she goes, "Great Scott, the flux capacitor doesn't work. Will, come with me." It was just like, I don't know if that worked. I'm sorry. And even specifically with Robin, like, I think she has some good moments. I've talked about a few of them, specifically with her interactions with Will. But I feel like her character's been let down a little bit with the writing this season. Like, I loved what Maya Hawke was doing in season 3. I thought she was done really well, even though she got a little bit more of a backseat in season 4. And I don't know if I'm just misremembering the previous 2 seasons, because I have not watched them in a little while. I'm going to try to rewatch everything before the final episode. But I don't remember her character bordering on annoying me near as much. Like, there's very much a diarrhea of the mouth, a little bit more of a quirky personality to her that feels cranked up to 11 this season. And I feel like the moments where it kind of rubs me a little bit wrong are more prevalent than they have been in the past. And beyond that, I think there's a couple other characters that the writing has let down, and it's Millie Bobby Brown and Noah Schnapp. Now, I think that these 2 characters are obviously big players in the story, so I assume that their character moments and their dialogue and everything is going to get much better after this first chunk of episodes, especially given how we ended episode 4. But I do feel like these actors kind of feel like they're going through the motions, and I don't know if I can blame that on the writing or if they're just at a point where they're kind of burnt out on Stranger Things and they're ready to be done. I don't know. I don't know where the mix of that falls. But for them to be such significant pieces of the story, I feel like there's glaring moments where they're not as strong as they have been in the past, and not even as strong as the actors around them in this actual batch of episodes. Now, to be fair, I don't think there was any moments in these first 4 episodes that anybody like wowed me. We've had tons of those moments in the past, and it always kind of changes who is really the standout in each season. And so far in these first 4, I haven't really had those moments yet. I'm sure they're coming, but yeah, there's been a lot of points where it feels like the 2 cornerstones of our storytelling in this season just aren't really nailing it so far. And I don't know if it's what they're given or what they're doing with it. Overall, guys, like I said, glad to be back. I have enjoyed these first 4 episodes. Watching them with my family was fun. I'm very much looking forward to the next batch on Christmas, and then hopefully having an awesome finale on New Year's Day. I have every bit of faith they are going to deliver, but there certainly are some rough edges to these first batch of episodes that give me a little bit of concern. We'll see what happens when we get the rest of this story, but let me know down below what you think of these first 4 episodes so far, and what has been your favorite season of Stranger Things thus far. Let me know that as well, because that's always a varying degree of answers. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, click over here for all of my 2025 new release reviews. I'm also going to put a little bit of an older video where I ranked my top 15 or so favorite TV shows for you to check out. I need to do an updated list on that at some point. Like, share, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss everything in the future. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.